The Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packers have had opposite seasons so far. The Packers started out hot and have not been great the last few games. The Minnesota Vikings started out looking like, I don't know, one of the bad teams. And then they beat the 49ers to put a punctuation mark on a 3-game win streak. So how do these two teams match up? Luke Braun and I from Locked On Vikings, Locked On Packers. A crossover Thursday is about to get set. Let's go.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski. I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, come hang out with us on our Locked On Packers YouTube page. It is a crossover Thursday. Luke Braun, Locked On Packers, Locked On Vikings. Let us begin. We are back again for another Locked On Packers, Locked On Vikings crossover. It is a Lambeau Field edition of Packers Vikings. And this crossover Thursday is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase, Locked On NFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, joined by the indefatigable Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings host. And we can Google it later.
What word did you just drop?
Well, you'll have to listen to it back.
Oh boy.
And this is a weird place for both of these teams to be. If you asked both these teams 3 weeks ago, and presented them this situation, I think both fan bases would go, I'm sorry, what happened? And
yeah,
so
right.
That's where I want to start here with the big storylines, because I can't imagine a bigger storyline than a team that looked kind of DOA for the first couple of weeks, now has won a handful of games in a row and just beat the team that everyone thought was the best team in the league. Luke, what's going on in Viking land?
Yeah, 0-3 start. All 3 games felt like they could have, turned a little bit different on this thing or that thing, but 0-3, and then they won 3 out of their last 4. But really beating this 49ers is different because, beating the Panthers, beating the Bears, that didn't really convince anybody of anything.
Yeah.
But going on Monday night, yeah, right. But going on Monday Night Football and beating the 49ers, actually going toe to toe with that team in all facets too. It wasn't just, they finally, Brock Purdy just had a bad game and everything else, they got their butts again. No. They kept up in the trenches with that team. They kept up on the back end with that team with no Justin Jefferson. So I don't want to hear about Deebo Samuel either. So I think that proves something to fans, but I think it proves something to themselves too. Yeah. Because, you hear all this outside noise. Up until this week, the word has been fire sale. Everybody has been saying, when will the Vikings do it? Everybody's been asking their sources inside the organization. And every ESPN insider article has been like, they don't really seem like they're giving up on the season. But anyways, what could Danielle Hunter get in a trade? Like, that's what people have been going with. The Vikings haven't, Vikings fans, Vikings media, we've all blinked. We've all been like, I don't know, maybe we're just on house money now. But the Vikings themselves, they have not blinked at all. They have said, no, we know that we've got this. We know that we have a good formula here and enough talent. We just have to stop turning the ball over, which is an issue. You want the story of the Vikings? 4 of 7 games, they have turned the ball over on their opening drive. 4 of 7.
One of the worst first quarter offenses in football, despite being like a totally fine offense overall.
They dig themselves a hole every single week, and it's turnovers, it's penalties, it's dumb crap. But these are 2 of the
worst first quarter teams in the league. It's gonna be like,
oh my God,
21-14 in the first quarter in this game, just because that's how the NFL
just
works,
because
wild stuff happens.
Yeah, but okay, well, let's flip to you though. So, y'all right? What's going on? I've seen the 2 primetime games, right? I saw a decent amount of that Broncos game, just like what showed on Red Zone, because that's what I was watching that day.
Was that like 45 total seconds?
Yeah, right. Or at least the highlights, right? Like what is going on in Green Bay? This doesn't feel like the Green Bay Packers that they headed into the season as.
It doesn't. And I think, honestly, Luke, like if you asked the team and the organization if they thought they'd be in this position, given all the youth, like I think heading into the season, the narrative, the public narrative, the national narrative was rebuild. This team is not going to be very good. They're going to win. Like they're over.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the win total was 7.5.
7.5. Yeah. You and the Bears. It was the same. It was very funny.
Yeah. And there was a time when I think some books had it at 7. And so we don't recognize any book other than FanDuel, obviously, but I'm just saying other people thought it was going to be a lower number. So it like the Packers organization, though, very similar to what you're saying, they believed internally in their ability to say, okay, yes, it's going to be a very young team, but these guys can be coached up. And Matt LaFleur is a good enough schemer of offense to get them to play solid football. And the offensive line is going to be good. In pass protection, it has been. The running game is going to be really good. And the defense is really talented. This is going to be the year that they put it together with Joe Barry. Jesus H. Like, it's just not. And
the Fangio stuff.
I don't know. I don't know why anyone thought it was going to be. I like was very much this time like, it's got to be a little better. Like, I don't know about a lot better. It's got to be a little better. I put away the like, this is a top 5 defense potentially takes and was like, they'll be better. That has not materially happened in any sort of way. So they thought that the rookie mistakes would be either able to be mitigated or just not be as bad as they've been. And Luke, like when you go back, and I'm sure you will because you always do the homework, watch the Broncos tape. There are multiple plays where there are guys running routes in the same area, the same concept. It's like,
I saw you tweeting about that. What is up with?
It's just not how. It's just like and in some ways I can't explain it because some of the times it's like Christian Watson, who's supposed to be in year 2 and who was a big part of their breakout at the second half of last season. And so I can't explain that. Or it's basic outside zone and Elton Jenkins, who's their best offensive lineman right now, David Bakhtiari hurt, and he's just whiffing. Those are weird things that you just didn't expect coming into the season. And that's what makes this so bizarre. The other thing, and this stat hurts my brain. Right now, the Packers, their first half EPA per play. Your listeners are rolling their eyes, but this is true. Their first half EPA per play. I care about this for my team, not just the Vikings, just so everyone knows. 30th in EPA per play. Right? 30th in the first half.
Really?
31st in success rate. In the second half. Do you want to guess what they are in EPA per play? You may know because you've seen my tweets. Number 1.
I didn't see this one. Number 1, really? Okay, so they're a second half team.
Per play in the second half, and number 2.
They're an adjustments team then.
It's a weird thing, and the rookie Tucker Kraft, who your audience might know, South Dakota State kid.
Sure.
He said, "Well, the difference for us is we've seen them for a half. We know how the safeties are going to rotate. We know what kind of fronts they're going to play against us, and then we can just
take 2 drives. That's the standard for that.
It's
2 drives.
They need that adjustment period." And then all of a sudden, they look really good. Like they scored 17 points in the fourth quarter against a Saints defense that was playing lights out. Like if you go back and watch the first 3 quarters Saints tape in that game, that defense, Alontae Taylor was like, had Jonathan Vilma saying Charles Woodson. And
oh my God.
Then in the fourth quarter, Jordan Love, they score 17 unanswered and they win that football game. So it's been a very, very, very weird season for this Packers offense. And if they could just get anything going in the first half, like they're 12th in EPA per play on offense in the aggregate. That's what
digging out of a hole all the time.
Yeah, that's what first and 30th. But it's not garbage time, Luke. They've had in 4 losses, they've had 3 fourth quarter leads. So it's not just like they're racking up a bunch of yards or a bunch of scores down 21. No, they're coming back in these games and taking the lead with a chance to win. And so it's like that's why the prompt I put up here is who the heck are these teams? Because it's been very similar. It's been the reverse. The Packers for the first 3 weeks looked like, hey, we're going to go to the playoffs. And the Vikings looked like, let's trade Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter and all these guys. And the last 3 weeks, they've looked like one of the 3 worst teams in the league. And the Vikings have looked like one of the, 8 best teams in the league. It's been crazy to try and figure these teams out.
Yeah, they've been okay. I think 3 and 4 is probably reasonably close to a good litmus for the Vikings. Because we'll go with inconsistent. And that's the deal. I mean, we talked so much last time we did this about 1-score games, right? Well, guess what? They haven't had yet a 2-score game either way. At wins, losses, all 1 score. I said it in
the Packers have had 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said it in the NFC North like roundtable thing that we did. They can beat anyone. They can lose to anyone. It's been true of them for like 3 years now. They can go beat the 49ers and stun the world. And then they can also like the Tyson Bagent Bears were in the end of that game. The Panthers were in at the end of that game. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It's going to be a close game. It always is. So I always tell people, don't touch that dial. It doesn't matter what happened. We've had 2-score leads. We've blown 2-score leads. We've had 3-score leads, comebacks, the whole deal. The Vikings have this explosiveness in their offense. And even without Justin Jefferson, they're kind of finding it with Addison now. And they have this also, their offense also has this tendency to just sputter and die for entire quarters. And you can have this like touchdown drive, 3-and-out touchdown drive sequence, and suddenly the whole face of the ballgame has changed. There's a lot that can go on here, but I know that we have to maybe do some more salient predicting. And I want to ask you some stuff about Jordan Love in a little more specificity as well.
I can't wait to do it. We're going to dig into the matchups here in just a second. A Locked On Packers, Locked On Vikings crossover edition.
Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash is a wonderfully convenient thing. I'm sure you all already have it on your phone, but it is something that is particularly great, at least for me, in terms of finding those sort of secret local spots. Like there's a place near me that it's this burrito taco place that I found on DoorDash. And I've actually, it's within walking distance. So I can actually do the pickup option and just go like walk in. I've been getting it so much. It's horrible for me, but my goodness, has that changed the game. That is what DoorDash can be for you. It's also great for like a quick emergency grocery run. If you're in the middle of cooking something, you're like, crap, I forgot an onion. You can just order that thing real quick on DoorDash. It'll come straight to your door and you don't have to skip a beat. So you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend 15 or more on your first order with DoorDash. If you haven't already joined, just download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23, LOCKED23. That's subject to change. Terms apply. It's 50% off of up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23.
All right, coming into this game, I think the thing that I am most interested to see, Luke, is, Brian Flores was the big offseason acquisition. You and I had some conversations on Twitter and in our roundtable and probably offline about what he was going to mean to this team. A lot of Packer fans, including myself, very jealous of what that could bring for this team. And yet I was still going, okay, look, the personnel got worse, and so they can't be better. They're better. So them versus Jordan Love is going to be fascinating to me because this team is going to present all sorts of looks that Jordan Love has just probably not seen. When you look at that matchup, what are you looking for? Yeah,
well, their DVOA regressed to average. Sorry. I mean, that's what we talked about in the summer, right? It did. It did. But it's not a passive process. It's because the Vikings looked at what they had done, the Fangio, the quarter half, all the crap, and said, no more. We're done with that. Let's go to something crazy opposite. And Flores is so off the wall bizarre. This defense is like nothing else the Packers will see this season or have seen this season. They lead the league in blitz percentage by a lot, by like 50 blitzes. I
have the stat. They have blitzed 50 more times than any other team in the NFL. That is the number, 50.
Yeah. They also lead the league in drop 8 coverage and 3-man rushes.
What?
It's bizarre. They have spent the last 2 games in 5-1-5. So 5 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and 5 or 4-1-6 dime with 3 safeties and 3 corners. They're in a totally different sport. It's bizarre. They're leaning on like Josh Metellus to do everything. He's playing will linebacker. And sometimes he's free safety. I mean, he's been elected a captain. Like they're really, really happy with Josh Metellus and the kind of player that he has grown into. But it's a lot of that.
What do they call the 5-1-5? Are they calling it penny? Like, what do they call it? Do you know?
I think they call it by front. I call it penny, but I don't know if that's the right word that they use. But like that would be the word that the Packers use. That's the Fangio
That is the word that the Packers use, yeah.
So what it's been, there are games, they blitz the Chargers 82% of the time.
Wild.
Wild. And they got punished.
Herbert was on one in that game.
Yeah, they got punished super hard for that. And then they've had games where they don't really blitz at all. And they sim a lot of pressure and they back off and they play zone, which like they did against the 49ers. But they've had games, I mean, they blitzed the crap out of the Bears and the Bears fell apart. The Panthers fell apart. So the question that the Vikings pose to you is, can you counter this? Can you work in a space that is condensed by free rushers? Because they will send one more guy than you have blocking. So free rushers, there's going to be an open guy, but can you find him? And if it isn't blitz, if it's a simulated pressure or a disguised look on the back end, can you process that post snap quickly enough on that condensed timeline? That's the question they've posed. And hey, look, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, the answer was yes, and they lost those games. But Bryce Young, Justin Fields, not so much. So where do the Packers fall there?
You know, that's going to be one of those questions that I think we have not seen since Jordan Love's first start, a team say, we're just going to blitz you until you prove you can beat us. They've had pressure.
Yeah.
They've had pressure because this offensive line has not played great. Rasheed Walker, who looked good the first two games he was in there coming in for David Bakhtiari, has been pretty bad the last couple of weeks. John Runyon Jr., who had been a stable force for them at right guard, and as a pass protector, kind of the wheels are falling off a little bit there. And so 2021, even though the Packers won 13 games, they could not pass off stunts at all, like the whole season. And part of that was Royce Newman was starting at right guard and he just like could not process what he was seeing in front of his face. They're still struggling to do stuff like that. Teams are working in these games, even without sending extra rushers. One of the big penalties in the Broncos game was a 3-man rush from the Broncos where Elton Jenkins got called for holding. Was it ticky-tack? Yeah. Was it a hold? Like by the letter of the law, yeah, probably was a hold on a 3-man rush. Like you just can't have those kinds of mistakes. So given that Jordan Love is Bryce Purdy, as you already pointed out.
That's right. Okay, wait, can I explain my take there? Because
I like immediately got it when you said it. I immediately understood what you meant. But please,
two guys that hate to set their feet. That's the core of that take. Two guys that just hate to set their feet. And I think it's because Jordan Love learned so much from Aaron Rodgers, who never set his feet, but he was Rodgers. He could get away with it. And I think Jordan Love can't get away with it as much. And I think it's the same as Brock Purdy, who's just trying to do too much all the time. And there's been a lot of dropped interceptions in San Francisco too, which, you know, the Vikings didn't drop theirs.
He has a higher turnover worthy play rate than Jordan Love this year, which kind of seems crazy because I think he has 5 or 6 fewer interceptions in total because a bunch of them have been dropped. You know, you have one that's awarded the other way. Like, you know, these things happen.
Crazy.
We haven't seen a team approach the Packers this way this season. So I don't know what their answer is going to be. I think in years past, like last year, if they'd seen a Brian Flores defense, I think their answer would have been, here's AJ Dillon, here's Aaron Jones. If you guys want to play these smaller fronts, we're going to come downhill and make you tackle in the run game. This run blocking group has been bad. The run game has not been good. Jordan Love has, I think he has 3 20-plus yard runs. He's the only player on the team with one. He has more 20-plus yard runs than, I think he has more 20-plus yard runs than everyone else on the team combined. So he's going to be able to use his legs at time to evade free rushers if he needs to. The question is he going to be able to get to his hots, as you pointed out? And the guys who are going to be hot, are they going to know they're going to be hot? Are they going to be in the right places at the right time? And if they don't spend the whole week prepping this, I don't know what to tell you, Luke, because Matt LaFleur took the blame, as he always does, after the Chiefs game 2 seasons ago, when you have Steve Spagnuolo just every down. Here's everyone. Block everybody, please. Here's cover 0 on 30% of snaps.
That's not even weird sounding to me.
No,
now.
Well,
this is the
Brian
world.
Flores, that's like a Saturday. And so that, like, are they going to be able to do something like that? Are they going to want to do something like that? I'm very curious to see how they decide the best. Is it just drop 8? Find somebody. Make an accurate throw somewhere.
What do they think of Jordan Love? That's the deal. Do they think he's going to fall apart on hurried, or is he going to fall apart on he can't pick apart his zone?
Take this, a similar approach to defending Jordan Love as Brock Purdy? And that was actually why I brought this up, Luke, because I think your take, by the way, is more smart than I think both 49ers and Packer fans want to say.
Well, that's what because I never want to call. I don't know who's like what people's opinion of those two guys are, so I don't know who that pisses off at all.
Well, everyone.
Maybe you think both guys are good. That's fine.
Everyone.
Yeah.
But so do they take the same approach to Jordan Love as Brock Purdy? We'll see, I guess. But I think that is ultimately how this game will be defined. How Jordan Love handles whatever Brian Flores comes up with, I think will ultimately decide this game because, Kirk Cousins is going to do what Kirk Cousins does. He is going to hang in there against pressure and still make ridiculous throws that make you go, dude, come on. Like you're about to get hit in the face. And he makes a crazy throw on a post and it's a touchdown. And you're just like, wow, how did you do that? Don't do that. Please stop doing that. And Kirk Cousins seems to do that, especially against the Packers for whatever reason. Like someone can be in his lap and he makes an accurate throw. So I think this comes down to how Jordan Love can react to Brian Flores. That is the only matchup to me that matters in this game, except I will add, the Vikings, I believe, are the only team without a rushing touchdown this season from a running back.
Yeah, they're really bad at rushing on the goal line, but they also lead the league in passing touchdowns.
That will also, I think, 100% happen on Sunday. There's just like a 100% chance that Joe Barry allows them to run the ball in.
Got it.
Sunday. That's
finally get Madison into pay dirt.
Yep.
Start your Madison shares. Well, yeah, okay. So there's a whole bunch of different funny things that can happen in this game.
And we could talk about all of them. I want to talk about a bunch more of them as we get our keys to victory here. Locked on Packers, Locked on Vikings, a crossover edition.
Thanks so much to the sponsor of today's episode, which is FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. I think last time I looked at FanDuel, the line for this game was Vikings by 1.5 on the road. I can't remember the last time the Vikings were favored in Lambeau. That's pretty crazy. So if you disagree, why don't you go ahead, head on over to FanDuel and bet on it. And if you throw down a $5 bet on that or anything, it can be Alexander Madison touchdown prop, whatever you want, or something from another game or whatever, you get $200 back in bonus bets just for signing up at FanDuel.com/lockedon and placing a $5 bet. Win or lose on that bet, you still get $200 back in bonus bets. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. The FanDuel app is safe and secure, super easy to use, and they pay out instantly when you win. Spreads, lines, all kinds of alt props, crazy stuff. Go browse the website. Go check back in the website every once in a while, too, because they've got all kinds of like daily promos and stuff that just happens to be about this baseball game on a Thursday you didn't know about. That can be some pretty great deals. So once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Where you can find America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. This episode is also brought to you by Jase Medical. The Jase case is their claim to fame. It is a first aid kit with like 5 different life-saving antibiotics in it that you can have on hand in the event of an emergency. Look, we live in a world where getting that kind of stuff is not exactly convenient. It can take a while for those prescriptions to get filled. There's supply chain stuff going on, or shoot, it might just be hard to get to the doctor in the first place, depending on where you live. So having that stuff on hand can be the difference between an injury and something a lot more catastrophic. So have that thing on hand. There is no excuse not to be prepared. Expect the unexpected. You can go to jasemedical.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. It's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com.
The answer is 2017 was the last time the Vikings were favored.
Wow. And that was Brett Hundley game. Yeah, the shutout.
I thought it might be 2018, but that was the infamous tie. The Daniel
tie. I was at that game.
The Daniel Carlson tie.
Yeah, the Daniel Carlson tie.
Daniel Carlson
left early.
Now is the kicker for the Green Bay Packers. And if he had made the kick last week against the Denver Broncos, the Packers might have won that game. In fact,
what a strange. There's so many strange things when the Vikings split the Packers.
That is like why the prompt for those of you watching on YouTube for the final segment, which is keys to victory, is who does the dumbest thing? Because inevitably someone will do a dumb thing. And that's what especially the Packers have been doing lately. False starts on 3rd and 1 at the goal line.
Sure.
Like just the dumbest things you can possibly do. And This is the same team. I can't remember if it was 2 years ago that you called them. Which team was the meme team? Do you remember? It was just like
the meme team.
Week.
They're always the meme team. I think they were the meme. The funniest year I think in recent memory for the Vikings was 2020, or it might have been 2021. Those 2 years were very funny when you're not actively invested in the success or failure of the team.
I get it. Yeah.
But I mean, come on. Last time they went to Lambeau, they didn't get the right shoes on. I mean, they didn't wear like the 7 stud cleats. It was like a whole media thing. And it wasn't like a lot of Vikings fans were like, why didn't they take better care of the grass? That's horrible. It was wet grass. Come on. You had to know you were getting wet grass at Lambeau in January. And by the way, it's going to be wet again. So let's test that equipment manager and see if we can get that one down and maybe find something else super dumb to happen. Like that, I was so mad. It was embarrassing to see them. They couldn't even like run on that field.
Are there any, understanding that there's obviously going to be some stupid stuff that happens, any injuries, because we have to talk about like some of those things?
Yeah. So Justin Jefferson.
It's early now, but we know Justin Jefferson is not going to play.
He's on IR.
Like, okay, what's going to happen here? Ezra Cleveland is, I think, a name to keep
He's
an eye
a maybe.
Here. Yeah.
Ezra Cleveland is a maybe. We have to see about TJ Hawkinson, who hurt his foot on Monday Night Football. He said in front of the media his foot is fine, but he did not participate in practice, so that's something to keep an eye on. People seem fairly optimistic that he'll go
right after the game. Luke, you know this.
Yeah. Well, no, he said it today.
Okay.
He was like right after not practicing. He's like, I'll be fine. So who knows, right? Ezra Cleveland's an interesting one, but we all feel pretty good about Dalton Reisner at left guard in his in relief there. So that's something to watch potentially. I think the deal is going to be how do they move the ball, especially if they don't have Hawkinson, but it's how do they move the ball without Jefferson? And the answer to that has to be Jordan Addison, who had this big breakout game on Monday Night Football. But here's the deal. He is not a physical receiver. He's a small receiver. He's a speedy finesse guy. So I go back to the last Lambeau game, the blowout last year. Yeah. And the way that Jair Alexander played against Jefferson's really physical, jam at the line and squat, that kind of deal. And I'm looking at it. Do you think that the Packers will do the same thing? One of the dumb things that I could just remember is from week 1 last year, how mad Jair Alexander was that he wasn't on Justin Jefferson. So do we think the Packers will say, okay, Addison is the guy now. He broke out. Jair, you go get him. Or are they going to like try to zone this off and we can put CJ Ham on Jair Alexander all day and make him not matter?
So right now, we do not know if Jair Alexander is going to play. He practiced on Wednesday.
There's that too, yeah.
That's a good sign. The back injury, there's one of the people that I follow on Packers Twitter always talks about how athletes they never had back injuries. You always just have back injuries. They don't really go away ever.
Sure.
And as someone who has a back injury, it's true. Like it's always about maintenance. And some days you feel great and some days you don't. So you hope that he's going to play. It's been interesting over the course of the Joe Barry experience to watch when he decides to do it versus when he doesn't. Is he going to let Jair Alexander shadow Jordan Addison? Almost certainly not. But they will have a plan for Jordan Addison to be sure. And Russell Douglas is a physical corner if he wants to be, if the plan is for him to be. And if Jair Alexander can't go, it will be Carrington Valentine, a rookie who they were very high on in camp and who played awesome in the preseason for the most part anyway, who is a physical corner, but who the Broncos were able to attack a little bit with Cortland Sutton, at least situationally on third down, those kinds of things. This Packers defense is set up to not give up the big play. I think you will continue to see that. The other part of this, Darnell Savage on IR, not available to them. Eric Stokes goes on IR, not available to them. So in a week where you only really are scared of one of the receivers, and that's not to say KJ Osborne's not a nice receiver. He certainly is.
He's a guy. He's not a guy you game plan for sure.
Right. I get what you're saying. But has Jordan Addison proved that you have to game plan for him right now? Yeah, because he's it. Like that's who they have. That's who they're going to lean on. Does that mean I have confidence that Joe Barry is going to do that thing? No. So I think that they will dare the Vikings to run. And if the Vikings are willing to be patient, and we'll see on that, I think there will be opportunities to do that, but the goal is going to be no big plays because that is what the Vikings want to do. So Kirk Cousins, if you want to throw 40 times and average 4 air yards or 5 air yards on 40 throws, cool.
I think that's a fever dream that Kirk Cousins would have.
And he is willing, he's more than willing to check it down, as you know. So, you know, can you play, you know, disciplined is the word I was looking for. If I were a human being and could think of words, that would be the word that I would have gone with. And they couldn't in week 1 last year, right? Quarters coverage could not figure out how to guard Justin Jefferson anywhere. We'll see if that's the plan. We talked about this in the last segment. How do you think Brian Flores is going to play Jordan Love?
I think you send him. I think you go, look, you know, I mean, it depends on, he probably looks at a bunch of blitzes and sees, you know, am I afraid of what happens here or not? So I think he's going to send it a lot. He's going to muddy the looks. He's going to force post-snap processing. That's the way he attacked Purdy. Is force you, all of the pre-snap stuff Purdy does is useless to you now. You know, you got to figure this out on the fly and make you do that. And if Jordan Love does that and he beats you, so be it. That's the way we live. I will say, if TJ Hawkinson does play, to your point about game planning, I think he's somebody that the Vikings, like, he will tell you where the play goes. The Vikings run everything through TJ Hawkinson. He's lead blocking on a bubble screen a lot of the time. He's, you know, chipping and then going deep, which is not something that a lot of people get out of their tight ends that can be in the protection and part of the deep part of the route concept and like get there on time. A lot of athleticism for a big guy to do that. All of that is super, like, he is a load bearing player. He is a pillar of the offense.
I like that.
So if he doesn't go, a lot of things will change. If he does go, he is going to be a very, very crucial part of that game plan. And I think also the Vikings remember what happened in January, and I think they want to tag you back. I think they're going to come out mad. I hope they'll come out mad and with a little bit of intensity, and they're going to go, look, last time we were here, we got embarrassed. Let's go show them what we're about.
And this is a gut check time. I almost said a different word that rhymes with gut, but it is a gut check time for the Green Bay Packers because you got to keep it together because I'm not going to be able to keep it together if you can't. Stop it. Because this team, look, three straight losses, and this is what happened last year. They went 3-1, and they lost, I think, 5 games in a row.
Right, yeah. And then they were just digging out of a hole.
A very similar situation. This Packers team, interestingly, has done a much better job of, we go down 14 points or 60, I guess it was 16-0 to the freaking Denver Broncos. They came all the way back and took the lead in that game. They went down 17-0 to the New Orleans Saints, came all the way back and took the lead in that game. So they're not going to just like get punched in the face and not recover. But against the Lions, for example, they got knocked out in the first half, and then there's just no recovering from that. So if the Packers can keep this game close, that is where then we get into who does the dumbest thing possible in the fourth quarter. And we'll see. I think for the first time, maybe since 2017 on this program, we'll not be picking the Packers to beat the Vikings. I can't in good conscience right now do that. I have to be honest about it. I'm not going to do that. So this is a game that I think has got something like, I think it can be close. I think it can be competitive. I think the Packers can win. I just don't think they will. Something like 24-21, even 27-21 would not really surprise me. Although I will say, Luke Braun, last year, not a single team, nary a one, played the San Francisco 49ers and covered the following week. It did not happen last year. And on a short week,
that's wild.
On a short week, this week on the road, I'm just saying the line
division swung, on the road. That's the deal about it. Weird things happen. My whole life watching Vikings Packers games, it has not mattered if the Packers are good. It has not mattered if the Vikings are good.
Of your whole life,
14 years of my life, it has always been a hard fought game. It's just the way it is with the division rival. You know each other too well. It just equalizes a little bit. So the only thing I can guarantee about this game, the only thing I can confidently predict is that it will be a 1-score game. That's the only thing I can say for sure, because that is just who the Vikings are. But I guess, I mean, look, we'll have to see.
You know what?
Right?
Can I make a confident prediction on that?
Yes.
One fan base is going to be so pissed that they lost because they absolutely should have won. That is what's going to happen.
Yes.
And that's going to make great content for us. And I can't wait to talk about it.
It's going to come down to ref crap or something.
Yeah. So, please don't. Let the players decide the game, for the love of God. And I'll be live after the game. Luke, will you be live after the game?
Oh yeah. Locked On Vikings postcast every time. And you can catch it later too if you miss it.
Come find us. Otherwise,
if you want to hate listen, we take those.
We're gonna have a lot of fun. And we get to do this again, and I can't wait. Mm-hmm. And who knows? Maybe both of our seasons, team seasons, will be over by the time we talk again. That seems pretty likely, honestly. But
who knows?
Who knows? That's the beauty of all of this. And we will talk to everyone next week. Thanks to Luke for coming on. It's Locked On Packers, Locked On Vikings crossover edition. We get to do this again. Love talking to Luke. Love talking to Lauren. Love talking to Matt. I am very lucky that we have awesome hosts in the NFC North where I get to do these multiple time crossover editions. Back tomorrow, an interview on our Fall Fridays. We're having fun with that Fall Friday theme. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, and anytime you want to come hang out with us live on YouTube, you can do that after the game, like this week on Sunday afternoon on our Locked On Packers YouTube page, so you can stay Locked On Packers.